Make sure to subscribe and hit the like button.
Say a father is playing with his boy, and he gives him a slap on the behind. The boy looks around, and if he sees an angry expression on his father's face, he feels hurt. It was painful. But if he sees his father is laughing at him and was just teasing him, it doesn't hurt him at all. And so it is with all our sensations. The way they impress us positively or negatively, as good or bad, depends to a very large extent on the context in which they are set. Take, for example, in a poem like this by the humorous poet Thomas Hood. The poem says, "They went and told the sexton, and the sexton told the bell." Now, it's the same sound told in either case, but its meaning is completely different because of the context in which it occurs. If the second line had said, "and the sexton told the minister," then it would have had the same meaning in both lines. And just as words change their meaning in accordance with their context, so the meaning of what we experience alters contextually. And so it is this, then, that close awareness of our feelings reveals. In the same way, we can say we weep when we are sad, but we also weep for joy. There are tears of joy and tears of sorrow. Exactly the same tears, exactly the same physical sensation, but what a difference the context makes. And therefore the idea of the Buddha was to become delivered from suffering, not by running away from it, but from looking at the actual concrete reality of what we feel and forgetting the context. Now, of course, this is obviously something quite possible in the milder forms of suffering. But what happens when suffering becomes really acute? Perhaps as an illustration of this, I might turn to a very extraordinary work of art. It is a sculpture of Saint Teresa by Bernini. Look at that face and try and decide what feeling that face is expressing. Is it agony? Is it a rapture of delight which would, as we say, cause one almost to swoon? What is it? Actually, if you look back and see the whole scene, you will see that the saint is confronted by an angel who is piercing her with a dart, the dart representing the divine love. And so the figure represents Saint Teresa in ecstasy, in profound joy, profound delight at the state, the inner feeling of her union with the Godhead. And this is exactly what is meant by ananda, ecstasy, for pleasure and pain in their most intense forms, both producing that we could call ecstasy. A very striking illustration of this has been given recently. Some of you may have heard of the work of a British obstetrician by the name of Grantley Dick Reed, who has many students among obstetricians in this country. For as you know, the pains of childbirth can be some of the severest pains that a human being can undergo. And the point of Dr. Reed's work has been to show that if you change a woman's attitude to the experience of childbirth, if, in other words, you stop calling these feelings pains, and instead you call them tensions, and if, before childbirth, you train her to relax, to let go of herself, and, as it were, cooperate with the tensions that she's experiencing, the whole character of childbirth can be changed. And many women who have undergone this pre-birth training say afterwards that what they might have expected to be an extremely unpleasant experience turned out to be a profoundly moving experience, even a joyous one. Now, of course, it's pretty clear that we can do something like that when the context of a painful experience is very positive, as it is with childbirth. After all, this is a creative event. But wouldn't it be a very different matter in the case of the pains of death? Would it be possible, for example, to look upon the pains of death as natural tensions, and so have an entirely different attitude. I don't know why not. After all, we fear death, we have a negative attitude to death, largely because of social conditioning. It's what we've been taught. For example, just to give another illustration and then get back to the subject of death. The idea of being sick, I mean vomiting, is something which most of us regard as disgusting. But is it actually disgusting? Don't we revolt with the feeling of disgust from it? Because when we were little children and we were sick and we threw up, our mothers went, "Ah," and we caught from them the emotional attitude toward that kind of experience, so that it reverberates and echoes with us ever afterwards. Well, it's rather the same with death, because death is, after all, beneficent. If we never died, not only would our world become hopelessly overpopulated, not only might we become utterly bored with century after century after century of experience without intermission, we might crave death after the first 500 years of life. And never to be able to have it would be like the torture of a chronic and fantastic insomnia. So, if death is fundamentally merciful, if it is natural, if it is something that is just as much an integral part of being a human being as having a head or having hands, then would it not be possible to have a changed attitude to death in any community or society, so that in due course people could begin to look upon the pain attending death in the same way as they can be taught to look upon the pain attending birth?
Make sure to subscribe and hit the like button.